Have you ever shared something personal only to watch the room grow uncomfortably quiet? In our digital age, where oversharing has become normalized, the wisdom of discretion seems increasingly rare. Yet as we enter our golden years, knowing what to keep private isn't just about etiquette. It's about protecting our dignity, relationships, and even our security. Today, we're exploring a critical skill that many of us struggle with as we age: the art of thoughtful discretion. In a world that encourages us to share everything, how do we determine which parts of our lives are better kept private? How do we maintain meaningful connections without revealing too much? Throughout our working years, many of us developed habits of sharing to network, connect, or establish our expertise. But in retirement, these same habits can sometimes backfire, leaving us vulnerable or inadvertently pushing others away. Today, we'll discover how to strike that perfect balance, sharing enough to form authentic connections while maintaining the boundaries that preserve our dignity. By the end of our time together, you'll understand exactly which topics deserve your discretion as you navigate this new chapter of life. You'll learn practical strategies for graceful conversation pivots and discover how setting proper boundaries can actually deepen your relationships rather than limit them. Before we dive into specific guidance, I want to share a story that perfectly illustrates the challenge many face when transitioning into retirement communities or social circles. To make this clearer, listen to this story about Jack Reynolds, a successful 56-year-old executive who recently retired and joined the Silver Horizons Community Center. Silver Horizons sits perched on a coastal bluff, its modern architecture featuring expansive windows that frame the Pacific Ocean. Inside, tasteful furnishings and warm lighting create an atmosphere of casual elegance where adults over 55 gather to learn, socialize, and build new connections. Jack arrives for his first day dressed in casual clothes that still hint at his executive past. Pressed khakis and a polo shirt that looks more appropriate for a country club than a community center. His confident stride carries him through the entrance, though a flicker of uncertainty crosses his face as he scans the welcoming lounge. Claire Bennett, the silver-haired community coordinator, approaches with an efficient yet warm demeanor. "You must be Jack Reynolds. Welcome to Silver Horizons. I'm Claire, and I'll be showing you around today." As they tour the facility, Jack's enthusiasm bubbles over. "This place is amazing. I just retired 6 months ago after 30 years at Meridian. Financial. The retirement package was quite generous, nearly $2 million in my 401k, plus stock options." He laughs a bit too loudly. "Should keep me comfortable, unless the market tanks again." Claire's smile tightens slightly. "That's quite substantial. We're glad you've chosen to spend some of your time with us here. Let me show you our activity rooms." During his first gardening class, instructor Marcus Franklin demonstrates pruning techniques to a small group gathered around a raised garden. Bed. When conversation shifts to home improvements, Jack can't help himself. "I paid $1.2 million for my beachfront property 3 years ago, but it's worth $1.8 million now with the market and my upgrades," he announces proudly while awkwardly handling his pruning shears. The other participants exchange glances. Marcus, a practical man with sun-weathered skin and calm demeanor, skillfully changes the subject. "Speaking of improvements, these heritage roses will improve dramatically with proper care. Now let's discuss mulching techniques. Before we continue, if you're committed to finding the best version of yourself, comment the number 1 below." Now back to where we were. After class, Marcus approaches Jack privately. "You know, Jack, you might enjoy Vivian Ellis's workshop next week on meaningful connections at any age. She's a retired psychologist with some fascinating insights on building relationships in this new chapter of life." Jack nods, oblivious to the gentle course correction. "Sounds interesting. I'll check my schedule. I just bought a new sailing boat, so I've been pretty busy getting it set up. Cost a pretty penny, but you only live once, right? Marcus simply smiles and pats Jack's shoulder. Little does Jack know how much he has to learn about the delicate art of discretion in his new community. Lessons that will ultimately transform how he connects with others in this new chapter of his life. Next day, Jack attends Diana Walsh's watercolor class, where participants paint scenes representing their life journeys. Diana, a free-spirited woman with silver-streaked auburn hair and artistic jewelry, creates an atmosphere of creative expression. The studio is bright and airy, with easels arranged in a semicircle, facing large windows that frame the coastal landscape. Today, we'll use color and form to express our life's journey, Diana explains, demonstrating broad watercolor strokes across her paper. Don't worry about technical perfection. Focus on the emotional truth of your experience. The class works quietly, with occasional murmurs of encouragement. When time comes to share their work, most participants offer brief, thoughtful reflections. One woman presents a painting of winding road, explaining simply, "My journey had unexpected turns, but each led somewhere beautiful." When Jack's turn arrives, he reveals a dark cityscape gradually giving way to lighter coastal colors. But instead of a brief explanation, he launches into detailed revelations. "This represents my 30 years at Meridian Financial," he begins. "I sacrificed everything for that company, missed my son's baseball games, my daughter's dance recitals. My wife almost left me twice." His voice rises with emotion. "I realize now it wasn't worth it. The board pushed me out 6 months ago. Younger guy, MBA from Stanford. 3 decades of loyalty meant nothing to them." The room grows uncomfortably quiet. Diana gently places her hand on his painting. "Thank you for sharing something so personal. Jack, there's powerful emotion in your work." She pauses delicately. "You know, Vivian Ellis offers private counseling sessions that many find helpful for processing life transitions. Sometimes deep reflections like yours benefit from a more private setting." Later that day, during a community luncheon, Jack finds himself at a table with several Silver Horizons members. The conversation flows pleasantly until someone mentions recent legislation affecting retirees. "Let me tell you what's wrong with that bill," Jack declares, launching into strong political opinions. As several people shift uncomfortably in their seats, the discussion turns to healthcare. "I've already told my kids exactly what I want," Jack announces. "No extraordinary measures after 80. I've got a detailed living will, 27 pages. My lawyer says it's the most comprehensive he's seen." He continues describing his end-of-life preferences in clinical detail, causing several people to lose their appetites. He then compounds the discomfort by adding, "And I've already decided who gets what when I'm gone. My daughter gets the house and investment accounts. She's always been better with money. My son gets my cars and the beach property, though honestly, the way he manages his finances, he'll probably sell it immediately." Jack chuckles, oblivious to the stunned expressions around him. Claire, observing from nearby, exchanges a concerned glance with Marcus. After lunch, she approaches Jack with warm determination. "Jack, I've arranged for you to meet with Vivian Ellis this afternoon. She's one of our most respected members, a retired psychologist who leads our Meaningful Connections workshop. I think you'd enjoy her perspective." That afternoon, Jack finds himself on the Ocean View Terrace with Vivian Ellis, a serene woman, in her late 60s, with silver hair pulled into an elegant knot. Her kind eyes carry an unmistakable wisdom, and her presence emanates calm confidence. "I've heard you've been making quite an impression," she begins gently, gesturing for Jack to join her at a table overlooking the Pacific. The rhythmic sound of waves provides a soothing backdrop to their conversation. Jack shifts uncomfortably. "Everyone's been very welcoming, but sometimes I get the feeling I've said something wrong." He frowns. "At Meridian, being direct and transparent was valued. I'm just being authentic," Vivian smiles. Authenticity is beautiful, Jack, but as we age, discretion becomes even more important than in our youth. She leans forward slightly. There's a meaningful difference between secrecy and privacy. Secrecy is hiding something that should be revealed. Privacy is protecting what's precious by sharing it selectively. Jack considers this. I've never thought about it that way. In my years as a psychologist, and now in retirement, I've observed that there are certain topics that those of us over 55 benefit from guarding more carefully, Vivian explains. Not because they're shameful, but because discernment in sharing them protects both ourselves and our relationships. As the afternoon sun casts a golden light across the terrace, Vivian begins to share her wisdom with Jack. Wisdom I'll now share with you. The first area where discretion serves us well concerns our retirement plans and timeline. Many of us don't realize how revealing our exact retirement dates or financial details can affect our professional relationships and security. When I retired from my psychology practice, Vivian tells Jack, I only gave specific details to those who needed to know: my partners, my accountant, my family. Others simply knew I was transitioning to consulting until it was done. Jack leans forward. But why the secrecy? I told everyone at Meridian exactly when I was leaving and what my package included. Vivian nods thoughtfully. And how did that work out for you? Jack reflects on his last months at the company, how he was gradually excluded from important meetings, how younger colleagues began to treat him differently, and how rumors about his generous package led to awkward interactions. I see your point, he admits, but isn't transparency important? Transparency has its place, Vivian agrees. But consider this. When we broadcast our retirement timeline, we sometimes invite others to make decisions about our relevance before we're ready to step away. We may find ourselves sidelined prematurely or exposed to judgments about our choices. This is true for all of us. Whether you're contemplating retirement or have already made the transition, discretion about your timeline and financial arrangements protects your dignity and agency during this vulnerable transition. Instead of sharing specific figures or dates with acquaintances, consider using general terms. I'm planning my next chapter, or I've prepared carefully for this transition. For those still working but approaching retirement age, remember that age discrimination, though illegal, remains a reality. Keeping your exact plans private until necessary gives you control over your professional narrative. With close friends and family, of course, more detailed sharing may be appropriate, but even then, consider whether revealing exact financial details serves your relationship or potentially complicates it with unconscious comparisons or expectations. If this topic interests you, comment 1 below. This helps me better understand what you like. Continuing, the second topic requiring thoughtful discretion involves inheritance decisions and estate planning. These deeply personal choices reflect our values and family dynamics. And premature sharing can create lasting conflict. As Vivian and Jack continue their conversation, she shares an illuminating example. A friend of mine decided to divide her estate unequally among her 3 children, giving more to the one who had struggled financially. She announced this decision at a family gathering 10 years before her passing. What happened? Jack asks, thinking of his own unequal inheritance plans. Those 10 years were filled with resentment, attempts to change her mind, and damaged sibling relationships. The hurt lingered long after she was gone. Vivian's expression grows somber. These decisions are yours alone, Jack, and sharing them prematurely only invites others to feel entitled to opinions about your choices. This wisdom applies to all of us navigating the complex territory of legacy planning. Your inheritance decisions deserve protection from outside judgment or influence. When we announce specific inheritance plans to family members years in advance, we may inadvertently create competition or resentment between siblings or other beneficiaries. Subject ourselves to pressure to change decisions based on others' expectations. Damage relationships that could otherwise remain loving and intact, foster unhealthy dynamics where financial expectations overshadow genuine connection. Instead, work privately with trusted advisors to create your estate plan. If you choose to have preliminary conversations with loved ones, focus on your values and hopes rather than specific amounts or items. For example, I'm planning to support causes that have been meaningful to me, or I'm working to ensure all of you will be treated fairly based on your individual circumstances. Remember that your estate plan should reflect your wishes and values, not external pressure or others' expectations. Privacy during this planning process preserves both your autonomy and your family harmony. The third area where discretion serves, well, involves our past regrets. Self-reflection is essential for growth at any age, but constantly voicing regrets can reshape how others perceive us and even how we see ourselves. During their conversation, Vivian gently addresses Jack's watercolor. Class disclosure. Reflection is healthy, Jack, but constantly voicing regrets can lead others to define you by old disappointments rather than who you are now. Jack looks out toward the horizon. I do think about those missed baseball games a lot. Sometimes it feels like talking about them helps me process the loss. And that processing is important, Vivian agrees, but consider carefully who should be part of that process. A trusted friend, a counselor, a support group specifically focused on life transitions. These are appropriate spaces for deep emotional work. A new acquaintance at a watercolor class may not be equipped for that level of intimacy. This balance between authentic sharing and appropriate boundaries applies to all of us. Wisdom in aging includes discernment about when and where to process life's disappointments. When we repeatedly share our deepest regrets in casual settings, several things happen. We reinforce neural pathways that strengthen those regretful feelings, potentially deepening our own sense of loss. We establish ourselves primarily as people defined by past mistakes rather than present possibilities. We place an emotional burden on listeners who may not have the capacity or relationship to properly support that level of disclosure. We create social discomfort that can actually prevent the meaningful connections we're seeking. This doesn't mean suppressing important emotional processing. Rather, it means choosing appropriate contexts for deeper work. Consider professional counseling, close friendships built over time, spiritual advisors, or structured support groups as settings where exploring regrets can lead to growth rather than social awkwardness. In more casual social settings, practice acknowledging past challenges briefly before pivoting to present interests or future possibilities. My corporate career taught me many things, including what I don't want to prioritize in this chapter of life. These days, I'm exploring watercolor and finding such joy in it. What creative pursuits do you enjoy? The fourth area where discretion particularly serves us as we age concerns our political opinions. In today's polarized climate, strongly expressed political views can instantly damage relationships built over decades. With a knowing smile, Vivian mentions Jack's luncheon incident. Politics have always been divisive, but in today's world, these views can instantly fracture potential friendships before they even have a chance to form. Jack shifts uncomfortably. But isn't it important to stand up for what you believe in? I've earned the right to my opinions. You absolutely have, Vivian affirms. The question isn't whether you should have strong convictions, but whether every conviction needs to be vocalized in every setting. She pauses, choosing her words carefully. The wisdom of age is knowing when passionate beliefs are best expressed and when they're best kept private. This discernment serves all of us in our later years, when building new community becomes increasingly important for our well-being. Studies consistently show that strong social connections correlate with better health outcomes and longer life expectancy for older adults. Yet political differences can create immediate barriers to forming these vital connections. Consider the purpose of various social gatherings. Are you there primarily to debate politics or to form friendships based on common interests and mutual support? In settings focused on the latter, political restraint often serves your larger goals better than immediate expression. This doesn't mean abandoning your values or suppressing important conversations. Rather, it means taking time to establish relationship foundations before introducing potentially divisive topics. Reading the social context to determine whether political discussion is welcome. Expressing opinions when appropriate with nuance and openness rather than absolute declarations. Recognizing that in retirement communities and senior social groups, you're creating a shared living environment where respectful coexistence matters deeply. Many of us find that with age comes a deeper appreciation for the complexity of most issues and greater humility about our own perfect understanding. This wisdom can translate into more thoughtful, selective sharing of political viewpoints. When politics do arise in conversation, try approaching with curiosity rather than certainty. I'm interested in understanding different perspectives on this issue creates more connection than, let me tell you what's wrong with people who think differently. As the afternoon light begins to soften, Vivian observes Jack wrestling with these new perspectives on discretion. She offers reassurance. Privacy isn't about denying who you are, Jack. It's about revealing yourself gradually in layers as trust develops. Think of it as a gift you unwrap slowly, allowing others the pleasure of discovering you over time rather than all at once. Jack nods thoughtfully. I've always been an open book. It never occurred to me that some pages might be best revealed. Later in the story, Vivian smiles. Exactly. And remember, discretion isn't about fear or shame. It's about respecting the power of your life story and choosing intentionally how to share it. As they watch the waves break against the shore, the rhythmic pattern mirrors an important truth about human connection. It ebbs and flows, reveals and conceals in a natural dance of intimacy that cannot be rushed. For all of us navigating our golden years, this wisdom offers a meaningful path forward. Discretion, thoughtful, intentional sharing creates space for relationships to develop organically. It protects our dignity while still allowing for authentic connection. Most importantly, it honors the complexity of our lived experience, recognizing that a life richly lived contains multitudes that cannot and should not be revealed all at once. As Jack and Vivian continue their conversation on the ocean view terrace, the afternoon sun begins its gradual descent toward the horizon. A gentle breeze carries the salt scent of the Pacific, and the rhythmic sound of waves provides a soothing backdrop to their meaningful exchange. There's another area where discretion serves us particularly well as we age, Vivian continues, her voice gentle but direct. I've noticed you frequently mention feeling obsolete since retirement. Jack looks surprised. Have I said that? I guess I have been worried about becoming irrelevant now that I'm not in the corporate world anymore. Vivian nods knowingly. This brings us to our fifth consideration, personal insecurities about aging. These vulnerable feelings are universal, but revealing deep insecurities about aging or relevance can subtly reshape how others perceive your confidence and capabilities. This insight resonates with many of us navigating our golden years. As we age, we naturally encounter new insecurities. Concerns about our changing physical abilities, our relevance in a rapidly evolving world, our cognitive sharpness, or our place in society. While acknowledging these feelings is essential for our emotional health, broadcasting them indiscriminately can create unintended consequences. When we regularly voice insecurities about losing our edge or not keeping up with technology or becoming a burden, we inadvertently invite others to view us through that lens of limitation. Even more concerningly, we begin to internalize and strengthen these negative self-perceptions, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. I understand the impulse to share these feelings, Jack, Vivian explains. Vulnerability can create connection, but there's wisdom in being selective about where and with whom we share our deepest insecurities. Jack considers this. So I shouldn't talk about feeling out of place here? Or worried about keeping up? It's not that these feelings shouldn't be expressed, Vivian clarifies. It's about discernment. Some vulnerabilities are better discussed with close friends, family members, or professionals who can offer proper support without changing how they fundamentally view your capabilities. For all of us, this balanced approach means acknowledging our insecurities in appropriate contexts while not leading with them in new relationships or casual settings. Consider who in your life has earned the right to hear about your deepest vulnerabilities, who has demonstrated the capacity to hold these concerns with respect rather than using them to define you. In new social settings, focus on your continuing strengths, interests, and contributions rather than areas of insecurity. This isn't about denying reality or projecting false confidence. It's about choosing which aspects of your complex experience to emphasize in different contexts. When insecurities do arise in conversation, try reframing them as growth opportunities rather than deficiencies. "I'm still learning how to navigate social media" carries a different message than "I'm too old to understand technology." This slight shift preserves your dignity while still acknowledging the challenge. Professional support through counseling or support groups offers valuable spaces to process age-related insecurities fully. There, you can explore feelings without concern about how they might reshape casual relationships or community perceptions. I've found that with age comes a beautiful opportunity, Vivian tells Jack, her eyes reflecting wisdom earned through experience. We can finally distinguish between the opinions that matter deeply and those that don't deserve our energy. Not everyone needs access to our innermost doubts. Jack nods slowly, beginning to understand. I've spent decades caring what everyone thinks. Maybe that's a habit I can finally let go of. Exactly, Vivian smiles. That's the freedom of this season. Choosing deliberately what we share and with whom. The conversation shifts as a seagull lands briefly on the terrace railing before taking flight again, a reminder of the lightness that comes with letting go of unnecessary burdens. Now, Vivian continues, there's another area where I noticed you sharing quite extensively at lunch, your future care preferences and end-of-life decisions. Jack winces slightly, remembering the uncomfortable reactions around the table. Too much detail. These matters deserve respect and proper context, Vivian explains gently. When we share detailed healthcare directives or end-of-life preferences, in casual settings, we often create discomfort for others while diminishing the seriousness of these important decisions. This brings us to our sixth consideration, the privacy of future care preferences. As we age, planning for our future care becomes increasingly important. We develop opinions about assisted living facilities, in-home care, medical interventions, and end-of-life wishes. While having these plans is wise and necessary, sharing their specifics requires thoughtful discretion. When we discuss detailed medical directives or end-of-life preferences in casual social settings, several problems can arise. We create unnecessary discomfort for listeners who may not be emotionally prepared for such serious topics in a social context. We diminish the gravity of these decisions by presenting them as casual conversation, may receive unsolicited opinions or judgments about deeply personal healthcare choices. We potentially expose ourselves to those who might take advantage of our vulnerability or influence our decisions for their benefit. These conversations have their place, Vivian assures Jack, but that place is typically in private discussions with your healthcare providers, legal representatives, and those few family members or close friends who would be involved in supporting your wishes. For all of us, this means being intentional about when and where we discuss our healthcare futures. Rather than sharing your 27-page living will details over community lunch, consider having structured conversations with only those who need to know your wishes. When the topic does arise in general conversation, you might acknowledge, briefly, that you've done your planning without delving into specifics. Yes, I've worked with my doctor and lawyer to ensure my wishes are documented. It brings great peace of mind. Speaking of peace of mind, has anyone tried the new meditation class here? This approach honors the importance of these decisions while maintaining appropriate boundaries in social settings. Remember that discretion about healthcare futures isn't about secrecy or denial. It's about respecting the gravity of these decisions by giving them the proper context. I thought I was just being thorough, Jack admits. It never occurred to me that talking about my medical directives might make people uncomfortable. Most discomfort in conversation comes from context mismatch, Vivian explains. The right topic in the wrong setting creates tension, even when the content itself is perfectly appropriate somewhere else. As they continue their conversation, the sun begins to cast longer shadows across the terrace. A group of residents gathers for an evening social at the other end of the deck, their laughter carrying on the breeze. There's one more area where discretion particularly serves us as we age, Vivian says, referencing Jack's interaction with Marcus in the gardening class. I understand you mentioned the specific value of your beachfront property and recent renovations. Jack nods. The real estate market has been good to me. I'm proud of my investment. Understandably so, Vivian acknowledges. Yet sharing specifics about wealth, property values, or valuable possessions carries risks that increase as we age. This brings us to our seventh and final consideration: discretion regarding property values and possessions. As we age, we often accumulate valuable assets, homes in desirable locations, art collections, jewelry, antiques, vehicles, or investment portfolios. While these represent security and success, broadcasting their specific values can expose us to unnecessary risks. When we share detailed financial information about our assets, particularly with people we don't know well, several concerns arise. We may attract unwanted attention from those who might target older adults with valuable assets. We risk receiving constant unsolicited financial advice from those who suddenly see themselves as investment counselors. We potentially create uncomfortable disparities in social groups where financial circumstances vary widely. We might inadvertently foster relationships based on financial interest rather than genuine connection. Privacy about financial matters isn't about shame or secrecy, Vivian clarifies. It's about security and ensuring that your relationships are based on who you are, not what you own. For all of us navigating our later years, this wisdom offers practical protection. Instead of sharing specific dollar amounts or detailed lists of valuable possessions, consider more general references when the topic arises. I've been fortunate with my housing situation, rather than detailing your property's exact value, or I enjoy collecting art, rather than specifying how much each piece cost. If you enjoy discussing investments or property, consider joining specific groups focused on these interests, where such conversations are contextually appropriate. Financial advisors, investment clubs, or real estate groups provide settings where detailed financial discussions fit naturally. Remember that financial privacy becomes increasingly important as we age, since older adults are disproportionately targeted for financial scams and exploitation. Discretion about your assets is not just about social grace, it's a practical safety measure. Do you want more advice like this? Hit subscribe and let's optimize your best years together. Continuing, I never thought about it from a security perspective, Jack admits. I just wanted people to know I'd done well for myself." "That's a natural desire," Vivian responds with understanding. "But consider this. True respect comes from who you are, not what you own. When we lead with our possessions, we miss the opportunity to be valued for our character, wisdom, and genuine contributions to our communities." This perspective reflects ancient Stoic wisdom that remains profoundly relevant in our modern world. The Stoics taught that external possessions and circumstances, while preferred, should never define our worth or happiness. True wealth comes from cultivating inner qualities that cannot be taken away: wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. As we age, this philosophy offers particular comfort. While our material circumstances may change, our capacity for growth in character and wisdom only increases with years of experience. By focusing on these internal goods rather than external possessions, we build security that transcends financial fluctuations. "So what would you suggest?" Jack asks, genuinely curious now. "How do I talk about my life without mentioning these things that seem important to me?" "It's not that these aspects of your life are forbidden topics," Vivian clarifies. "It's about approaching them with thoughtful discretion and context awareness. Ask yourself, why am I sharing this particular detail? What purpose does revealing this specific information serve? Is this the appropriate setting? Have I established enough relationship with this person for this level of disclosure?" Jack considers these questions thoughtfully. "That's a very different approach than I'm used to. In business, disclosure was straightforward. Either something was confidential or it wasn't. Personal relationships involve more nuance." Vivian smiles. "The good news is that discretion becomes more natural with practice, and the rewards are immediate. You'll notice how conversations deepen when they're built on mutual discovery rather than announcement. As the evening light turns golden across the water," Vivian summarizes their conversation. "Privacy isn't about secrecy, Jack. It's about boundaries. At our age, we've earned the right to choose what parts of ourselves we share and when. That choice is power." Jack watches the waves break against the shore, their rhythmic pattern somehow comforting as he absorbs these new perspectives. "I've always been an open book," he says finally. "It never occurred to me that some pages might be best revealed later in the story." "Exactly," Vivian nods approvingly. "And remember, discretion isn't about fear or hiding who you are. It's about respecting the power of your life story enough to share it thoughtfully. This wisdom serves all of us as we navigate our golden years. Discretion, the thoughtful choosing of what to share and when, protects our dignity, security, and relationships while still allowing for authentic connection. It acknowledges that our life stories are precious resources to be shared judiciously rather than spent carelessly. In a world that increasingly values radical transparency, age brings the wisdom to recognize that not everything benefits from exposure. Some things grow better in privacy, like seeds that need darkness before they can reach toward the light. For each of us watching today, this balanced approach offers a path forward in our social interactions. Recognize that sharing everything immediately doesn't necessarily create intimacy. Often, it prevents it. Understand that discretion is not about shame, but about respecting the value of your life experience. Practice discernment about context, asking whether a particular setting is appropriate for a specific disclosure. Remember that relationships deepen through gradual, reciprocal sharing rather than immediate full disclosure. Protect your security by being prudent about financial and property details, particularly with new acquaintances. Honor the gravity of serious topics like healthcare futures by saving them for appropriate settings. Focus conversations on who you are becoming rather than past regrets or insecurities. These practices aren't about creating walls, but about building bridges that can truly support connection. By sharing thoughtfully rather than indiscriminately, we create space for relationships to develop organically and authentically. As we've seen through Jack's story, learning discretion might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've developed different habits throughout your working years. Be patient with yourself as you practice this skill. Like any new ability, it becomes more natural with time and intentional practice. What will you do differently now? Vivian asks Jack as their conversation draws to a close. Jack smiles, a new awareness evident in his expression. I think I'll spend more time listening and asking questions. I'm realizing there's so much to learn about the people here if I create space for them to share instead of filling all the air myself. That's a wonderful place to start, Vivian affirms. And remember, this isn't about becoming someone different. It's about bringing your authentic self forward in ways that create genuine connection rather than distance. As Jack prepares to leave the terrace, he turns back to Vivian with a question that reveals his growing understanding. The next community dinner is tomorrow evening. Any suggestions for how I might approach it differently? Just remember that every disclosure is a gift, Vivian replies. Give those gifts thoughtfully to people who have shown they can receive them with care. And always leave something to be discovered for next time. The mystery of what's yet to be revealed is what keeps people engaged in any good story. Jack nods, absorbing this final piece of wisdom. Thank you, Vivian. I think I'm beginning to understand. As he walks away, there's a new lightness in his step, the freedom that comes with knowing you don't have to reveal everything at once, that some things can remain safely private while still allowing for meaningful connection. For all of us, navigating the complex social landscapes of our later years, this balance between authenticity and discretion offers a path to relationships that honor the full richness of who we are without compromising our dignity or security. In a world that increasingly values oversharing, the wisdom of thoughtful discretion becomes a powerful tool for creating connections that truly nourish our spirits as we age. A few days later, Jack attends another community gathering at Silver Horizons. The evening event features local wines and casual conversation, with members mingling throughout the main lounge. Jack enters with a new awareness, his usual confident stride now tempered with thoughtful observation. When someone approaches and asks about his previous work, Jack pauses briefly, remembering Vivian's wisdom. Instead of launching into detailed financial specifics, he simply smiles and says, I was in corporate finance, but these days I'm more interested in hearing about this community garden project. What can you tell me about it? The conversation flows naturally from there, focusing on shared interests rather than Jack's personal history or financial status. As he moves through the room, he practices listening more than speaking, asking questions that invite others to share rather than creating space only for his own disclosures. Across the room, Vivian notices the change in Jack's interactions. Where previous conversations had ended awkwardly, with people finding reasons to move away, now they linger, engaged and responsive. When their eyes meet briefly, she gives him an approving nod as Jack finally begins forming genuine connections through thoughtful discretion. Later, when the topic of inheritance arises in a small group discussion, Jack simply mentions, "That's something I'm giving careful thought to," before skillfully redirecting the conversation to everyone's favorite, local restaurants. The evening ends with several invitations to future activities, a stark contrast to the polite distance he'd experienced before. Like Jack, each of us faces the challenge of finding the right balance between openness and discretion as we navigate our golden years. In a world that increasingly pushes for radical transparency, the wisdom to know what to share and what to hold private becomes an essential skill for maintaining dignity, security, and meaningful relationships. The 7 areas we've explored today offer practical guidance for this journey. Being discreet about retirement plans and finances protects your professional dignity and personal security. Keeping inheritance decisions private preserves family harmony and your decision-making autonomy. Sharing past regrets selectively ensures you're defined by your present and future, not just your past. Approaching political differences with restraint creates space for connections that transcend ideological divides. Discussing personal insecurities in appropriate contexts preserves how others perceive your capabilities. Saving healthcare and end-of-life preferences for proper settings honors these important decisions. Maintaining privacy about property values and possessions protects your security and ensures relationships based on who you are, not what you own. As you reflect on these principles, consider how they might apply in your own life. Which areas resonate most strongly with your current circumstances? Where might a slight adjustment in what you share and with whom create more meaningful connections or greater peace of mind? Perhaps you've noticed certain conversations that consistently leave you feeling exposed or uncomfortable. Or maybe you've wondered why some new relationships seem to stall before developing depth. The wisdom of thoughtful discretion might offer a fresh approach. Ask yourself, what parts of my story deserve more protected sharing? With whom have I established the trust necessary for deeper disclosures? How might I create space in conversations for others to share, rather than filling all? The air myself. Remember that discretion isn't about secrecy or inauthenticity. It's about honoring the value of your life experience by sharing it judiciously. It's about recognizing that, like fine wine, some stories improve when revealed gradually rather than all at once. How will you practice this balanced approach in your next social gathering? What one change might you make in how you share personal information? Perhaps you'll experiment with asking more questions before offering your own experience. Or maybe you'll be more selective about which aspects of your financial situation you discuss in group settings. The beauty of this practice is that you can begin immediately, and the rewards often appear just as quickly. Deeper connections, greater peace of mind, and conversations that leave you feeling energized rather than exposed. As we close today, remember Vivian's final words to Jack. Every disclosure is a gift. Give those gifts thoughtfully to people who have shown they can receive them with care. And always leave something to be discovered for next time. The mystery of what's yet to be revealed is what keeps people engaged in any good story. Your story is still unfolding. Share it with the wisdom and discretion it deserves. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more advice tailored to your needs. Remember, your best years are ahead.